So he says, well, I may be coming a little too early, but I'm pretty sure we have a heart for Joshy.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything all night.
And now it's this tension of what's next.
Yeah.
When is it going to happen?
When is it going to happen? Is it going to fall through?
So it felt like, okay, great, excitement, all this noise, and then utter silence.
It's hard to describe what that moment is because there is a small amount of fear attached to that moment.
Of course, yeah.
Because they have to take out the heart that he has and put in a new one.
Correct.
It felt like we were closing a chapter of our lives that felt, when you're in it, it feels permanent. It feels like, when is this going to end? This is just home. It's time to accept it.
Yeah.
When the surgeon finally came to talk to us, he let us know that this was one of the hardest transplants he has ever had to do. So as soon as he came out and we finally saw him, my first instinct was, I just want to feel him.
Yeah.
It was just a huge sigh of relief.
Yeah. Every journey, every heart transplant is completely different. And you're like, great. But then when you see another one goes like, but still, why are we still here? I think, waiting for a heart, waiting for the surgery, but seeing him fight through all those things and pains and medicine and drugs that he had, man, it really wrecks your heart. From the very first time of surgery, we were looking for God to do a miracle and give him a brand new heart. But walking through our doors in Lakeland felt like the miracle.
Yeah.
So just say flash forward 4 months.
Flash forward 4 months. And it's a Monday. And Joshy is, I said that weird, flash forward 4 months. It's April at this point. We had gotten the initial call in January.
Yeah.
And Joshy is in, so he moved out of the ICU in December, the first week of December. He was moved into a step-down unit.
Yeah.
And so an ICU is for more critical patients, especially at Shands. It is a level 1 trauma center.
Yeah.
And so they have children on ECMO. They have them on life support. They have a lot more lines and arterial lines you can't do in like a regular floor.
It requires more care.
It requires a lot more care. It requires patient rooms that are just glass. There's no solid wall. Yeah. And so he is moved down into the step-down unit, and that's where we've been waiting for a heart. Yeah. And so in April, so in the step-down unit, I was going to say is that you only see the transplant doctor once a day. You'll see, which they're the attending. And so we'll see like resident doctors often. But the actual transplant doctor, we saw him once a day, whether it was in the morning or sometime in the afternoon.
Right.
So we had already seen this doctor. Joshy and I were in Gainesville. You were here in Lakeland.
Yeah. And
he came in again sometime after 5. And I said, hey, that's literally all I did because I was just surprised to see him again because I didn't request to see him. They'll come again if you request, but I didn't request to see him. So he says, well, I may be coming a little too early, but I'm pretty sure we have a heart for Joshy.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
And this is a big thing. I mean, this doctor has years of experience.
Yes, he's been
when it comes to heart transplant
team, I think, for 20 plus years.
20 plus years. So he's seen it all. I mean, he's walked those heart transplant journeys, and obviously every family is different, every situation is different. So for him to be the one to break that news early, I guess, and let us know was reassuring. I mean, but at the same time, because we've already gone through one.
And at this point, we'd been waiting 6 months.
And we've been waiting, 6 months.
In the
and
hospital.
Obviously, God chooses to do it when I'm not around, as everything else. Now it's not against Shands. Now it's against God. And I was like, well, come on, dude. So, but yeah, he broke the news. And
he did. He said there's still a lot of testing we're waiting on, but I'm pretty sure this is the one. So I said, okay, well, when do we think we'll do the transplant? Yeah. And he says, probably Wednesday. Anything can change in between that, but the goal for now is Wednesday. Yeah. There are a lot of things that go into organ donation.
Yeah.
because it's not just the one organ.
No. Yeah.
They have to make the accommodations for all the organs that the donor's family is deciding to donate.
Yeah.
So at that point, they were still waiting on where the other organs would be donated.
Yeah.
Joshy wasn't doing a heart and lung transplant. He was just doing the heart.
Yeah.
And this specific surgeon does ask for all the vessels attached to the heart.
Yeah. And just to put real quick, like the doctors that handle the heart transplant are not the ones that do the surgery. There's a specific surgeon that handles that, but they communicate with him, but we never got to see him till after the surgery. We've never met him, but that's all he does. He tends to the surgery. He's the one that does all the heart transplants in Shands Hospital. So now he makes the decision ultimately of how that looks like and what he wants to be able to be successful in the surgery.
So when he asks for the heart, he asks for those vessels, the main vessel that leads to the brain and the vessels that lead to the lungs. Mm-hmm. Because he asks for all those vessels, it is a huge ask to the donor family, because in that case, they cannot donate the lungs.
Yeah.
And he does it because at times that's what they need. They end up needing all of those vessels. Yeah. And so we have the heart. The donor family agreed to donating it. They never give names, but they at least give, there's a child who needs a heart type of information.
Correct.
And so at this point, because of what happened in January, I was just kind of like this, very, okay, we'll see. Okay, I don't want to get my hopes up. And it wasn't a lack of faith. Yeah. I think it was just, I remember what happened in January. Let me just pace myself. I was just pacing myself.
Yeah.
So I called everyone, and I love that everybody's level of excitement was exactly the same as the first time. Yeah. There wasn't like the hesitation that it was like for me or for you.
Yeah.
Because you were doing a next steps.
Yes.
So when I called you, you weren't answering the phone. Yeah. And so I sent like a text message. Yeah. When you get an all caps text,
you kind of answer the phone real quickly.
And I knew the laptop was in front of me. Yeah. And so I texted him and I said, answer my call.
Yes.
And so when I called him, I told him, he says, okay, do I have to leave now? And I said, well, right now they're saying not till Wednesday, but it could be tomorrow, as early as tomorrow or tonight. Mm-hmm. So you have time to finish your next steps and then grab your stuff and come to Gainesville. Yeah. And so then the next morning comes, and we had to tell the nurses. They had no idea.
Yeah. Again,
they didn't know about it yet.
He told us ahead of time. Early. Yeah. So.
And so I hadn't heard anything all night.
And now it's this tension of what's next. Yeah. When is it going to happen?
When is it going to happen? Is it going to fall through?
So it felt like, okay, great, excitement, all this noise, and then utter silence.
Like
someone shut the world off and nobody wants to say anything anymore.
It was pure torture. Yeah. We heard nothing. And in the morning,
nothing.
Still nothing. No orders had come in for testing. Yeah. The nurses hadn't heard anything from any doctors. And so I would just check on them often. The nurses, when have you heard anything? Yeah. No. But as soon as I do, I promise you'll know. And till finally a nurse came in and she literally ran in. Yeah. And she says, we got orders. So they're going to come and start taking labs. And so it was almost just a huge sigh of relief. Correct. I remember it because I was in contact with Miss Jamie and I was telling her it's been silent. Yeah. I've been telling my family it's been silent. We've heard nothing. I'm worried. Yeah. And so I called her back and I said, orders just came in, and she is just so excited. Screaming on the other phone. She's like, I'm going to make accommodations now. I'm packing my bag. Yeah. And so we were excited. At that point, you were already there. Yeah. You had Kayla.
Yeah, I got there Monday night already. So we were there Tuesday waiting as well. And, yes. And so we were there when the nurse came in and said we had orders.
Right. And so basically all the tests that they did to prepare for this transplant, they're doing it all over again. Yeah. They have to see, did anything change? And so they're doing labs, X-ray, EKG, echo. The only thing I think they didn't do was like an MRI or CT scan. Mm-hmm. No, they did a CT scan. They didn't do an MRI.
Yeah.
So there's so much testing. Even
a lot of people
before the
coming in and out.
Yes, a lot. At that point, there is no privacy. And we're packing up. I mean, you're talking about, we had been in the hospital at this point for 6 full months or 7 months? So we had accumulated a lot of stuff.
It became like a
studio apartment.
Yeah.
And so we had to pack all of this stuff up. And so we're doing all of that, and we're in and out moving stuff. We had just moving stuff to the Ronald McDonald House, putting it in the car, whatever we could do. We were trying to just prepare, because we knew we wouldn't be coming back to that room. At that point, we'd be going to the ICU.
Yep.
And so Wednesday came. There's a whole thing with timing.
Yeah.
But my mom, my sister, Pastor Justin, and Miss Jamie were all there at 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it was
1:00 in the morning.
Because previously we were supposed to, he was to be taken back
like
2 a.m.
Yeah, and then they ended up not taking him till 4. So we were just hanging. We were just hanging for a few hours.
We were literally like,
and that room
half asleep.
Is very warm. We were all very warm.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a really good time for Joshy, because there was he was very, very anxious.
Correct.
And he had a lot of questions. And so it was just a really good time for him to just take a breath and get his mind off of it before going into the surgery.
Yeah.
And so the time came, and they finally came in and said, all right, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time for him to go.
Yeah.
And so we got to walk with him. The nurses made like a little, the night shift nurse. So there's not a whole lot of them. But they lined up against the wall, and they played Joshy's song, because in December, we skipped that.
Yeah.
In December, Joel and Joshy wrote a song that's called Through It All. And so when we were walking down the hallway, they were playing Joshy's song as he was being rolled down.
Back,
And so he goes into the pre-op area, and at that point, it's just family.
Yeah.
So it's just me, you, and Michaela, and we got to give him kisses. Yeah. And it was just a time, I think, that we needed just quiet. And I have to say, I don't know. It's hard to describe what that moment is, because there is a small amount of fear attached to that moment.
Of course, yeah.
Because they have to take out the heart that he has and put in a new one.
Correct.
And so there is that fear of, are we making the right decision? Because he's here now.
Yeah.
Is this the right decision?
Yeah.
It's crazy, because we've been there for 6 months. There's no going back.
Decision. No. But it requires a lot to know that anything can happen too. I mean, nothing's ever off the table when it comes to facing the massive weight of what that surgery looks like. And when he does get taken back and they start the surgery, I mean, it was a 12 to 13 hour surgery.
It was 13 hours.
13 hours. So
they took him around 4:30. I would say he got rolled back. We didn't see him until 6:00 that night.
Yeah.
And
longest 13 hours.
Yes. And the whole time, I'm just desperate for updates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to know if the heart is in the building. I even asked, how far is it? And they're like, we can't tell you that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, protecting the donor's family.
Correct.
And so they can't give too much information. And so I say, okay, well, is it at least in the building? When is the heart in the building?
Yeah.
And it was just hesitation. We don't know yet. Like, is this for sure? Because it could be still until the surgeon has the heart.
Yeah.
At any point in time, we could be back in that step down unit waiting again.
Yeah.
And so I got a call, and they said, okay, Mom, surgery started. Surgeon has the heart.
Yeah.
And Joshy's doing good.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I finally accepted or realized, okay, this is for real.
Yeah.
And Miss Jamie knew that I was very hesitant.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, Abby, this is it.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no going back.
Yeah.
This is it. You can celebrate now. This is it.
Yeah.
And there was just a huge sigh of relief. Okay, we're actually here. There's actually a heart for Joshy.
Yeah.
So we waited.
Yeah.
13 hours.
13 hours in a waiting room.
I have pictures of PJ sleep. I don't know how he did it, but he looked like he slept really good on those chairs.
I think he had a bit of a waiting room delirium too, because
poor guy.
He had his best jokes in that waiting room. But you know what? We appreciate that, because that's the part of community that we didn't have the first time, and is able to them do community or connect with us or be there with us the best way they can,
right.
Which allowed us to distract us and get away from just sitting. The difference of what it would look like if we were sitting there in our own thoughts, in our own mind, with that weight by ourselves, and we were able to process those 13 hours differently. We were able to handle those 13 hours differently, because we could be we had a moment of escape from it. So that was a very big impact for us. And
it wasn't even just a quiet 13 hours. We have to get all of our stuff out of the unit that we were in. That
was hard.
This is when like community really just came in. And I don't even want to use the word community. They were our family. That was our village. They were our foundation at that point. The Lord and them.
Because one of the details is when we had to separate what we could take back to the ICU, which was very limited.
You can't take much because they sterilized the entire room. And so everything that you're taking into the room where Joshy is going to be has to be completely sanitized.
Every part, every door, every knob, everything has to be completely clean.
So once Joshy went to surgery, we took the first couple hours to just wait and make sure. And then it was, all right, it's time to move out of that room. And that was another emotional thing you don't think about is that was our home for 6 months. But we never had to leave the hospital. We had our friends and our family there, and they were packing up, loading. Miss Jamie was wiping down everything so that what we needed we could take into the ICU, and everything else either back at the Ronald McDonald house or going back to our house. And when we once that room was completely empty,
it felt real.
It felt like we were closing a chapter of our lives that felt, when you're in it, it feels permanent. It feels like, when is this going to end? This is just home. It's time to accept it. And so we were finally able to say goodbye. And so I know that wasn't the same for you. You were like, let's go. It's time to go. First of all,
I hate moving and packing. So that was just like feeding into that. So I was like, hey, I'm not hurt by it. Let's go. Let's get to the next.
Can you just wait a second?
I was like, no, let's go to the other room.
Just wait a second. Let me just process this, because I can't. This was 6 months of our lives. And I remember just standing in that room and just cried, but of gratitude. Of the family that we created in that room with those nurses. My gosh. I always say that it is up to the family to advocate for their child. So it's my responsibility to advocate for Joshy and the nurses to advocate for the family.
Correct.
And those nurses at Shands and in that unit, man, did they fight with us. They really fought with us. They cried with us. They waited with us. And I just wrote a note on the window with a dry erase marker, just, it's for the nurses. We love you. Thank you for helping us carry the last 6 months. And so we walked out and we were finally done. We were finally done waiting. We were finally done, and we went back to the waiting room. I'm about to cough. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. So we were in the waiting room, and
now it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and the surgery is over. And at this point, we're all masked up, waiting to see Joshy. We're standing in front of the waiting room. We knew he would walk by. And we've done this before. Not in a sense if he's had a transplant before, but previous open heart surgeries. We've had to see him like that before.
Correct.
And when you have open heart surgery, you go on bypass, which means they have to cool down your body so that your heart rate slows down so that they're able to operate on the heart.
Yeah.
So anytime Joshy came out of surgery, he was very cold. Yeah. Very, very cold. And so as soon as he came out and we finally saw him, my first instinct was, I just want to feel him. Yeah. And they have him covered neck to toes in blankets. And so I was just looking for any part of his skin that I could touch. I just wanted to touch him and feel warm. Yeah. And Miss Jamie caught a video and you just see me kind of just like patting all over Joshy. And when I finally felt it, it was just a huge sigh of relief. Yeah. And we got to give him a kiss. Yeah. And then they took him back to the room, and then it was just they have to get settled into the ICU. It's just a whole thing. And so
it's a long process before we get to actually be with him in the back
and listening to his new heart for the first time.
Yeah, we got to do that. They gave us a stethoscope that we still have, and we got all had turns to listening to the new heart. Even his sister Michaela got to listen to the heart, and
that was definitely, again, she was really small for Joshy's other surgery, so she's never had to see him that way before. Yeah. And if you know Michaela is not like me in the sense of she cries for everything. Yeah, yeah. She's not. She's a lot like Joelle. It takes a lot for them to cry.
Stonewall. Yeah.
And seeing her brother like that was very, very hard for her.
It is hard. I mean, even your mom got to walk back there, and she never
that was,
into
again,
any of her surgeries.
Very closed off all the other times, and we knew this one needed to be different. Yeah. Recovery, they were saying, we've seen kids after transplant go home as soon as 7 days, I think is what we were told. Yeah. But, it might take 21 days. Recovery was very hard for him. It was. And I forgot to mention the arteries thing. When the surgeon finally came to talk to us, he let us know that this was one of the hardest transplants he has ever had to do, because Joshy's heart, the vessels leading from the heart to the lungs were rock hard. Yeah. And that means every part of the donor heart he had to use. Yeah. And so it took him much longer because of
that. Yeah.
So recovery was hard. Breathing, learning to walk again. Because
now his body has to adapt to learn how to breathe in ways that he's never learned. And now things are working like they should, right? And so it's adapting and it's pushing to the limit. So recovery was longer, and I think the hardest thing about recovery that happened is not falling into the comparison game. Oh my god! Because you're sitting in the ICU, there are other heart transplants there, and then when you see other kids getting to go home, but you're still here, just a blanket of discouragement hits, and you try, and they try to tell you, they'll be like, your story is not the same, your journey is not the same. Every heart transplant is completely different, and you're like, great. But then when you see another one goes like, but still, why are we still here? And seeing those up and downs and those scary moments in recovery where he had some pretty questionable and tough things that happened, that was hard. I think, waiting for a heart, waiting for the surgery, but seeing him fight through all those things and pains and medicine and drugs that he had, man, it really wrecks your heart to be able to kind of know how to, because you don't know how to be for him the parent you can be when there is so much attached to him and there's so much things that need to work, and you don't even, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but you're like, how do I parent my 10-year-old or my 9-year-old through this now? How do I let him know it's going to be okay? because I don't know if it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
There was a portion in his recovery where he had these air pockets in his chest, and it basically collapsed his lungs.
It did.
And I remember that day so vividly because when they were trying to get this air pocket out, it collapsed his lungs so much that we were in that room, and all you see is the doctors running in and telling us to go. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, you only see those in the movies, and it's never a good thing. That's probably we shouldn't watch that much movies anyways, because we assimilate.
They communicate. They're
they
not,
did,
They're
but
not so bad to where they're like, get out.
Yeah, they're not.
And you don't
they're
know what's
not,
going on.
taking security and throwing you out. But it's just they tell you what is going on, but still they don't know what that's gonna look like. And I remember we went back to the waiting room and we're waiting, and the doctor that is Joshy's doctor now over his transplant, the team came out and kind of put his hand on my shoulder, and we looked at him, and he had like a few seconds. It felt like an eternity, but a few seconds pause, and he said he's gonna be okay. And I swear, the relief that was in my brain or that I was gonna keep to myself was so loud, and I was like, I thought this was the thing that I've always tried to prepare myself. The end, I thought this was it. And I wasn't ready. So that was a scary moment of recovery. It did backtrack us. It did delay us, at least for Joshy. But one of the things that was so cool that I started learning about Joshy in that recovery, and it's been his theme all his life. And the doctor started realizing this, you just got to give Joshy time. Mm-hmm. And every time they pushed away and they let him, he would bounce back. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Well, Joshy is stubborn. That dude does it the way he wants to. Really does. And they would always say, let him, if we do too much, we're going to hurt him. Give him time. And then out of nowhere, he's breathing on his own. He's walking on his own. He's pushing him past the pain. He's doing all these crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay, I want to be out because I know that he needs to be out because he wants to be home. But I think God knows the timetable, and some little bit, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But a lot of counseling through that journey also helped as well to be ready for those moments.
Yes, I remember. So I did. We did it virtual.
Yes.
Through the 6 months, and I remember I had forgotten about my counseling session, and we were already. It was at the day after Joshy's transplant, and she was calling me. Yeah. And so I opened and if once you open it, you get charged for that session, whether you stay the hour or not.
I'm going through with this now.
And I'm like, I've been talking to her about this for 6 months. I want her to just see it. So I remember just answering the call. Yeah. It was 10 seconds. I remember answering the call, and I turned the camera, and she just started screaming. Yeah. She said, finally, he got his heart. I'm so happy for you. Right. And so I wanted her to see because she was also part of the journey.
She was, yeah.
And so it was really cool that we were able to just gain. It was just a village. For sure.
Yeah, it was definitely needed. I think because again, there's no blueprint to this, and we needed people to speak differently and see differently. And obviously, like I always imagined the worst, and I had needed someone to tell me, well, what's the use of imagining the worst if you're not even there? Mm-hmm. You're setting yourself up for something you don't even know is the reality that you're going to face. And I was like, oh man. That's why you get paid for this, right? So I was like, got it. So I was able to pull myself out of that, even though I found myself back and forth when I did sit down with a counselor. He didn't get upset that I would be back there, but he would get me back out. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is what I need. So yeah, recovery was...
It was rough.
It was a rough, but we learned a lot. We grew a lot as a family.
I remember one moment, I can laugh about it now. Yeah. But in the moment, I was just... distraught. Yeah. Because one of their biggest concerns is ICU delirium. Yeah. You're on a lot of medication. Yeah. And so it was probably at 3:00 in the morning. Yeah. He had not slept. He was in so
my God, that's
much pain.
Yeah.
He was in so much pain, and he would just call me. And so if he's not sleeping, I'm not sleeping.
Yeah.
Mom. And so he called me, and I went to him, and he asked for you. He said, "Where's Daddy?" And I said, "Daddy's sleeping."
I bet you everyone's like, "Oh, that's so nice."
He's like, I said, "Daddy's sleeping. He's at the Ronald McDonald House, but he'll be here in the morning. He'll be here in the morning." He says, "Okay, I want to join a small group." And I sat there, and I'm like, "What?" He's like, I want to join a small group. And I said, okay, puppy, just get some rest. And my brain immediately, I just started crying. I'm like, he's going into ICU.
Oh,
this is
man.
so scary. He's going to start pulling wires. And I remember calling Miss Jamie. And I'm like, Miss Jamie, he told me that he wanted to join a small group. And she tried so hard not to laugh.
Yeah.
I could hear it in her voice. She tried so hard not to laugh, but she was so gentle too.
Yeah.
She says, it's okay, Abby. It's probably just the medication.
Yeah.
He's okay. They'll watch him. You're watching him. It's going to be okay. But every time I tell that story, Joshy does not remember it. But he thinks it's the funniest thing.
I mean, hey, pitch for small groups. It's targeted, so go ahead and sign up. But, and I guess I do good at my job. My kid in delirium, he remembers it. But there is a lot, and they would always tell us the few weeks of his recovery, he's not going to remember one thing.
He does not remember.
And we try to always ask him, are you sure? I don't think so. And to this day, if he goes back on one of our phones and looks at things of that time that we took for memories and remembering that stuff, he says, when did this happen? What? And I said, you don't remember nothing? He says, no.
Which I'm relieved.
Well, we're relieved. I know that as his sister and us, we carry that trauma and we walk through that in God's grace. But we're happy that he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And that he can live a life knowing that, hey, I got that second chance, that I'm living with a brand new heart or a better heart than before. So that's definitely at least in this journey, we're like, okay, we're good. Yeah. We're good with that, and we don't have to travel that. So
what was it like coming home?
What was it like coming home?
I have to say the whole dates thing because I don't know. I always say, maybe one day I'll know the purpose behind the dates, but I don't know. When we first left our house for that 2 days, it was November 8th. When he got admitted,
it was
November
I see where
10th.
you're going with this. Okay, yeah.
When he got his new heart, it was April 10th.
Yeah.
And when he got discharged, it was May 10th.
Yes.
And I am still just like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
When we finally got to leave, it was June, I want to say it was the 9th. It was the 9th because they didn't do discharges on Fridays.
Yes.
It was a Thursday.
Yeah.
It was June 9th. And so his first full day out was June 10th. And so it was scary, to be honest.
It was.
Leaving with him was scary because we were worried, okay, what if we don't know if something's wrong? What if he's having a hard time breathing?
Yeah.
But when he had the transplant, we knew we had to stay in Gainesville for at least a month after discharge. And so what they were hoping would be, no more than 10 days after transplant. Joshy ended up staying after transplant inpatient for another 30 days.
Correct.
And so we were finally able to leave a month after his transplant, and we stayed at the Ronald McDonald House. And so it felt surreal leaving the hospital with him, putting him in the car.
Yeah.
I have a video of Joel, putting him in the car and
with his oxygen tank.
He had to leave with oxygen, and which didn't last long. It was just a couple weeks of that, and he was able to be off and breathe on his own.
Yeah.
But it felt surreal, but also a huge sigh of relief.
It did.
It was a huge sigh of relief, and it's still a lot of work.
It is.
Being in the being at the Ronald McDonald House with all of that stuff, his oxygen tank, all of the medication he was on. It was a lot of work, but we prefer that 1,000 times over.
Yeah, and when we finally got to get to Lakeland and get home,
that was in July.
No,
I'm saying that wrong. May, we got to
detail oriented. So
May,
let's work with this with her together.
June, we were back in Lakeland.
Yeah, so we're in Lakeland, and I think that was I wouldn't say a bittersweet moment. I think the bitter part is only still there's some fear, but sweet because what we hoped for 8 months was becoming a reality now. So all these emotions, all this relief, all this excitement, but all of it boiled down to thank God.
Yeah.
I think thank God. And obviously if we're going to touch on the numerology thing, a few months later would be his birthday. He'd be 10 years old.
Yeah,
So it
he
all
was
fell,
turning 10 that,
you
yes,
know.
that's true.
But anyways, we won't touch on that. So
That
but-
was also the year he turned 10. I forgot.
yeah, but it was finally. You know what? Honestly, I'll say it like this. From the very first time of surgery, we were looking for God to do a miracle and give him a brand new heart. But walking in through our doors in Lakeland felt like the miracle.
Yeah.
And that was the miracle God was giving us. So I think that's brought it to where God gave us an answer of, this is your miracle now. So.
Oh, the number 10 represents unity or wholeness.
Look at that.
Complete.
Look at that. And I think that's just how God does things. Like the miracle we expect, it's not the miracle God has designed for us. But if we're willing and open to see what God has for us, we can say, this is the miracle I needed to walk in this home and say, you made this happen, God. Because if it wasn't for you, definitely wouldn't have been possible. So
our
grateful.
our first Sunday at TC, that was the big one. And I have to say, we were gone for 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months. And there was a lot of weight, not just that our family carried, but that everyone on staff here carried, and never once complained, and carried that weight for 8 months and waited for us to come back. And so walking back into TC together, all 4 of us together, was where it felt finally complete. Like we are actually home.
And I mean, we would come in and out in between the waiting, but it would be only 2.
Yes.
And it felt great when it was
all
4
of us.
It was different. So I think that was...
And that was bigger even for Joshy than I think we expected. We have 2 services. And so the first service, it was awesome being able to see our church family again. But second service, that's the big service. And as soon as he walked out, I mean, screaming, you can hear it in the video, just people screaming because they were not expecting to see him. And he broke down, which I didn't expect. I knew he missed home, but he didn't cry when we got home. It hit him when we got to church.
He knew it was for real.
This was his family. This is where he felt, I'm finally home and this is real. And that's when I think it hit for us, at least for me. Is we're finally back and we can breathe and he's here.
We usually do a final question with all of our guests, and since we have 2 guests today,
let's go.
I have one for Pastor Joel. How has this journey shaped the way that you do ministry now?
It definitely has reshaped everything I thought of ministry, and honestly, being in situations like that, you grow a level of compassion for situations and traumas and just journeys that people don't ask for, but they're part of it. But it really does. It shows me that your presence and being available is more important than what you say. And I think as ministers, we are good at formulating sentences or thinking what we know people need to say. And need to hear, need to hear, not say, but that's what you're saying. But we're not always good being present. And you say, well, I'm there. Are you present? Because it's different. It's different than saying a scripture that you use occasionally, or maybe not occasionally, every single time, to every situation that looks similar. And I've had to experience some walking out with some of our church family recently that put me in that position, reminding myself, what do I do? Well, what would I have wanted to be done, and what happened in our journey? Well, just cry with people. You don't have the right words. You don't have all the answers to any of it, because that's the magnitude of God. We don't always have the answers, but if he places you there, it's just to love people, cry with them, and tell them it's okay to be angry. It's okay to walk that out. It's okay to be confused, but there's still a God that loves you. And it reshaped that way, because I mean, I thought it was just preach the right sermon, say the right scripture, memorize that scripture, say with authority, and then walk out. This entire journey reshaped that thought. I said, there's no need of authority. There just needs to be a humanness to it. I think that's where it lands, is like being human. That being ministry does not take you away from being human. Allow yourself to do that and embrace that moment and love people genuinely wherever they find themselves in that trauma and what they're dealing with that day. So.
And Miss Abby, what is home life like now? What's it like to have Joshy back home?
Oh my goodness. It's awesome. The house is not clean anymore, but I love that the house is a mess. Yeah. Anytime I feel myself getting frustrated that I'm tripping over toys, I stop and I'm like, I get to trip over toys. Yeah. The house was clean before and I hated it. And now the house is a mess again, and I love it. Yeah. And it's just awesome seeing him go back to school, excited to be in school. I get teachers texting me saying he's not paying attention in class. That's fine. He's there, and he's doing so good, and it makes me happy. Yeah. It makes me happy that I have piles and piles of laundry to do again, and toys to clean up, and teachers to apologize to, and seeing Joshy and Michaela together. Yeah, there's just something special about that when you don't have it for 8 months. Yeah. But thank you, Abby, for being on this episode and letting us talk about our story. Thank you for being on here. If you enjoyed what we talked about, please comment down below. If you're not, please subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time. Do it all, God's with me, do it all, He loved me, do it all, God's with me, do it all, He loved me, do it all, God's with me, do it all, He loved me, do it all, God's with me, do it all, He got me.
Hi, my name is Joshy, this is the end of the podcast. Nope.
That was good.
The nose bump, I don't know where that, but okay.